Let's begin with our moderator. I'm going to let Eric Harkins from Navigate Forward introduce himself. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chum. Chum mentioned the turnout today, and first I just want to say thank you to everyone for taking some time, and obviously thank you to our panel for taking time out of their busy day. How many of you in the audience, this is your first clubby event that you've been to? That's great. So I think we have a great event in store, and we hope that this can be really interactive, really participative. I told Chum I'm happy to be the moderator, and my goal is that I don't have to ask a single question. So let's see if we can make that happen. Introduce myself, and then I'm going to just give the name and title of all of our panelists, but let them tell you about who they are and what they do instead of me reading their bio. So I'm Eric Harkins. I'm the Executive Vice President of Navigate Forward, a outplacement and transition services firm here in Minneapolis that works exclusively with executives, director, vice president, and C-suite executives who find themselves in transition. We offer other services like a board readiness program and some career visioning activities as well. But my background, I am a recovering HR generalist. Took me a long time to say that. Spent about 17 of my 22 years in HR leadership roles, and most recently I was the head of HR at The Nerdery, custom software development company in Bloomington, where we hired 300 people in an 18-month period, and I have a full appreciation for what these folks are doing on a daily basis and the challenge that comes with that. So let me introduce the panel, and then we'll get started. Kristen Dean. Thanks, Kristen, for joining us. Kristen is the Vice President of Human Resources for Delegate. Prior to Delegate, she was the head of HR at Code 42. So lots of experience in the tech space. We have Chris Dardis, who's the Vice President of the HR Executive Search and Consulting Practice at Verseek. We have Doug Decker, a Senior Talent Acquisition Consultant for Salo. We have Stephanie Propp, Senior HR Generalist for Bigos Management, and Stephanie Fry, who is the founder and president of Talent Q. So we won't take a lot of time with introductions, but Kristen, do you want to tell us a little bit about Delegate and what you do?
Sure. So Delegate is a software company based in Eden Prairie, and we help quick service restaurants run more efficient restaurants by aggregating all the data from the POS to video surveillance to give managers insights every day to be more effective. Prior to that, I was at Code 42, like Eric mentioned, and I started at Code 42 as probably the first HR person, so I was in there with a recruiter, came in at 250 employees, left about 4 months ago with 400 employees in 4 countries and 9 in HR. Recently started at Delegate, again, the only person in HR, hoping to get to a team of 9 or something closer to that, which would be a little bit easier. So happy to be here, thank you.
Great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Dardis, as Eric had said. I've been in the talent acquisition industry for about 17 years. 5 of those years have been within corporate roles, both with Target, where I ran their campus recruiting, and then most recently at Schwann's, where I was the director of talent acquisition at Schwann's. I am the vice president of one of the functions at Verseek. Verseek has about 7 different business functions that they focus on, from finance to IT, digital marketing. I happen to run our human capital division, so we offer both consulting and search services specifically for human resources roles here within the Twin Cities.
Thanks.
My name is Doug Decker. I am a consultant with Salo LLC. Salo is let's call it a smaller boutique firm offering consulting services in accounting, finance, and HR. I've been a consultant with them for the last 4 years in the talent acquisition space. About 16 years total in talent acquisition, both in external executive search as well as internal corporate, Target, Kohl's, and then the last 5 years consulting.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Propp, and I work for a smaller company. It's called Bigos Management. It's about 350 employees. We do property management, so we own apartment buildings all in the state of Minnesota, and we're actually owned by one owner. So I work for a small business owner and do HR for them. So we have it's a 3-person HR organization, so I do everything from hiring, firing, and everything in between. And I'm continuing the Target theme of prior to this, I was at Target as well. So sorry. Gonna get a lot of bullseye today. I did training, some recruiting, and then HR generalist too. So I've been in HR my whole career.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Renee Fry, and I'm the president of Talent Q. My company provides human potential for growing companies through talent. We provide contract and permanent hire solutions nationwide. My background, I've been in recruiting for 14 years. It is my absolute passion. My background is half within 7 years within a search firm and 7 years corporate recruiting, where I was at Target as well. So I recruited for the entire enterprise, and that's why I started Talent Q, because in the search field, it's unique to find someone that has had both seats, that has sat in a corporate seat for so long and recruited for an entire enterprise. So I get that side of the business, and that's where we're strategic partners with our clients.
Great. And prior to the nerdery, I did spend 8 years at Target in HR. So we did a little screening. Kristen slipped through the cracks, but and Stephanie's the only one that forgot you don't wear red after you leave Target. My wife was there for 15 years. The first thing she did when she left was literally throw away all of her red. Well, sold it at a garage sale. So she said, "I'm never wearing red and khaki again." So we really do want this to be very interactive. I am happy to throw a few softball questions, but at the same time, I think with this group, we shouldn't have to do too much of that. Are there any immediate questions that somebody is dying to ask to get this thing rolling? Yeah.
So you guys are here in a room of entrepreneurs who don't have large organizations, but are probably many of us on the edge of growth. And I'm wondering about how and when do you get the right, get a person who, or a team, or solving that problem when you're starting not with 350 and you're going to 700, but you're starting with 4, and you're probably going to go to 25. Same problem, different scale. Thoughts on how to address that in more of the small business situation?
So just to repeat the question, essentially, how do you scale effectively when you're starting with a small number of employees versus grow with a base of several hundred? And maybe I'll ask, I said I wasn't going to direct who answers the questions, but given your former and current experience, Kristen, maybe you want to talk about how you're approaching that at Delegate.
Yeah, well, I think there's a sweet spot of when to bring in someone in HR in-house, and I think that's about 75 to 120. Anything after that, it becomes a little bit more difficult culturally to bring in HR. And then prior to that 75 threshold, I think that's when you bring in and leverage your partnership with the recruiters at the table. I think it's great to have a partnership so that you can focus on the business and they can focus on the talent. And then when you're ready to have someone in-house, you can start slowly having that person leverage the relationships with the talent outside of the organization.
Anyone like to add anything to that?
Hi, everyone. This is Chris. I would probably say, as much as you can, talk to executive recruiters who may know of individuals who have been in your similar situation. And so if you can have conversations with different peers that have been there, done that, and it also completely depends on what sort of role you're bringing in, right? Is it the chicken or the egg, right? Do we bring someone so we can grow, or do we not bring anybody in because we can't afford them until we grow? So if it's a salesperson, obviously, that will come before the growth.
Sounded like there might be a follow-up question. Somebody started to ask a question in the audience? Maybe not. Okay. Renee?
I just wanted to add with my company the best piece of advice. So we've been in business, we're going on year 2 at Talent Q. The best piece of advice I've received, because I'm trying to scale my company as well, right? And I am an entrepreneur, small business owner, is I've been able to utilize other resources nationwide and then also overseas. So there's some avenues you can look at Upwork.com, has been really helpful for me in my business. But the best piece of advice I was given was from another successful business owner, and she said, hire people before you think you can, because the faster you hire people, the faster your company can grow and scale. Now, you have to hire the right people that are fit for your culture and that are bringing the skills that you need to the table. However, that was the biggest piece of advice I was given, and now in the past like 3 weeks, I have 2 people already that I hired. So I'm trying to scale as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
So you say hire the people with your company, but how would you scale the type of talent that you would need, especially for like a startup company, small company? You just said earlier, ask executives, but what if you're not executive level? Like, how would you find the talent to get your company going? Somebody above you, somebody below you, somebody near you? What's the advice for that, for looking for people?
So the question is, how do you identify the right positions to hire as you're growing, the right levels and the right people, and how do you identify who those folks are? I might walk around with the mic and let us use the mic when we ask questions, which will work well too. So.
So I guess my perspective would be know where, what skill sets you need at the company that maybe you don't have. So let's say you're wanting to start a company, you're starting to get bigger, you want to, start billing out your clients, and you realize, gosh, I just don't know a lot about accounting. That's a skill set that maybe you're not passionate about, or you just don't have the experience. And so I would really identify what are the holes that you have that you know that you can't fill, and then be really intentional about, I know I need an accountant, what type of skill set am I looking to buy? Do I want somebody who's been at a really big company? Do I want somebody who's been in a startup and so is going to be comfortable with that environment? And so trying to really figure out what type of background you're looking for. And then once you've done that, I think then the third thing I would do is really know your brand and your culture, kind of like what Renee said, because a lot of you guys, people aren't going to know who you are. You're not General Mills, you're not 3M, so there's not going to be a natural brand recognition. So really being able to talk about who you are, where your company is going, what the benefits are working for you, so that when you're reaching out to people right away, you've got kind of your elevator speech on why this new accounting position that's never existed before.
Great. Renee, go ahead.
Ladies first.
What I did with my company is map everything out on a whiteboard, and you write down every role and responsibility, and then you start bucketing out those into titles, and then you figure out where you need to go first to grow. That's what I did personally, and I did that with conjunction with the aid of a business coach.
Doug? And if you do have a question, why don't you go ahead and raise your hand and I'll come over with the mic.
So I don't intend to make a shameless plug, but I will. A lot of folks who are starting a business, getting going, you don't always know what you don't know. And in situations where you're just getting started and you know you need to scale up, there are resources, consultants through Salo, even Versique, that you can leverage that can help you figure out what you need to do, how quickly you need to do it, and help fill some gaps and some holes in the meantime while you're still figuring out, wow, what do I really need to do and what roles do I need to hire? The situation that I think is coming forward right now, in my opinion, is a perfect situation to leverage outside help on a temporary or a project basis to help figure out your next step.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. And just to demystify that even more, a lot of these consultants that can come out and help with business planning and things like that, it's often more affordable than one would think, simply because it's typically on an hourly basis. So if you just need them for 2 weeks or something like that, you're not going to have to sign a long-term deal or anything like that.
I'll just add, I just recently did this at the last 2 companies, is grow from 250 to 400, hiring 150 per year for 3 years at Code 42, and we didn't get it right all the time. And figuring out what departments to hire first was critical and something that we learned hindsight. And I think building your infrastructure is first. So building your IT, building your platforms, bringing in someone in HR who can help you figure out in 5 years where do you need to be and who are we going to hire to help you be there, and also working with your consultants or business partner to come in and help plan that, because organizational development is key. And we made mistakes along the way at Code 42, and what we ended up having to do was different layoffs because we didn't plan for 5 years. And you don't always know, but I think if you slow down and hire those key roles first, you can avoid layoffs in the future.
Great. And I'll ask a question. So I know this was certainly the case at the Nerdery, and I think a lot of people in the room share this, and the question that was asked earlier is indication of that. You know, for a lot of companies who find themselves in fast growth mode at some point, and now they're hiring 150 people a year, and even if on a scale you're hiring 10 people a year and you've never hired anyone before, you know, every company has its own unique culture that's really precious. And I remember when I interviewed with the owners of the Nerdery, the first thing they said to me in my first interview was, we know we need to hire someone and we're scared to death to do it because we're afraid somebody's going to come in and change the culture. So the question is, how do you ensure that whatever that culture is, whatever parts of the culture are precious to your company, how do you make sure that that doesn't get changed with 100 new people a year coming into the organization? How do you preserve the precious part of the culture?
So I actually went through this when I started at Bigo. So when I started 3 years ago, it was about 250 organization, and now in 3 years we've grown by 100. And when we were at 250, we had no vision, mission, core values, anything to even really know, like, what do we know we really like our culture, and everybody says we want somebody who is in Bigo's culture, but we don't know what that looks like. So I would say first it's really important to define that so that you can say, this is what our culture is, and do you embrace that as a candidate? And that's a really simple process. What we did is we just got a group of core employees together who knew our culture the best and just had them write down on Post-its, what words do you think of when you think of our culture? And got them up all on a board. We probably started with 1,000 Post-it notes, and then weeded it down to what are the, five core ones that we all felt embodied the company. So I would say start with knowing what your culture is first. And then I think whatever your interview process looks like, really making sure that you're asking questions to get at, does this person, you can ask the technical questions, but you can teach somebody a software program. You can teach somebody a process. You can't teach somebody to have integrity if they don't. You can't teach somebody to be honest if they're not. So really, I think knowing what you're looking for that defines your culture, and then interviewing for those kind of softer skills.
I think it's really important, as Stephanie said, to know what your culture is and make sure everybody within your organization is in agreement to what that is. And then through the interview process, be very deliberate about describing what your culture is. You might be surprised how many candidates might self-select themselves out knowing that they might not be a good cultural. Everybody wants to fit in an organization within the culture of that organization. And if you explain and the people on your team can explain what that culture is to candidates, they will decide for the most part on their own whether this is going to be a good fit for them. Candidates don't want to join companies that they don't want to be with for a long time. So they want to know, tell them what it is, and then give them the opportunity to say, yeah, this is exactly what I need and what I want, or this might not be for me. They will self-select themselves out if they have the information.
And then taking that a step further too, whether it's you're hiring to core values, you should always have, or I would recommend, having specific competencies set up for each role that you're hiring into. Those culture competencies need to be a part of that. And not only should you set up your interviewing questions based on those competencies, you should also set up your performance management to measure those competencies as well. So if you hire somebody, but then as they're in the company, they're not living up to those through your performance management project, then you're able to escort them out of the company because they don't match your culture.
Yeah, I think that's great, great advice. My favorite saying that I used all along my HR career was hire slow and fire fast. And if you didn't get it right, you're going to know pretty quickly, and it's just time to move forward and make sure. Question?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a change, but for some of the folks in the room that I've had the opportunity to meet, there's a number of folks that are in transition. And it was eye-opening for me as I attended the Minnesota Recruiters Conference a few weeks back. And I just didn't know if there's any advice, thoughts you have, because it was a great comments about hiring to culture, but sometimes it can be challenging to even make the connection happen, to find the right person. And you might find somebody that's coming from a large organization now into more of an entrepreneurial organization, those types of things. And just even talking about such things related to, must-haves, nice-to-haves, Boolean searches, all those different types of things. If there's any advice that you would give to some of the folks in the room as they look at trying to establish those connections, either on the employer or on the person in the search process.
When it comes to hiring or being hired, the number one best way to ensure a good hire and a good fit is through your own personal network. If you are the owner of a business or the leader of a function and you are trying to hire, if you do not have in place a mechanism, a process, or a function by which your existing employees and team members can refer talent to your organization, you will miss the best talent for your organization. Number one, and I am shocked and surprised at how many organizations I go into, they don't have a well-established process to encourage their employees to refer people. The folks that are in your organizations and know your organization, they know who you are, and they will refer, by and large, excellent people. If you're out there looking for an opportunity, I'm not going to tell you not to post your resume on the job boards and all of that good stuff, but I will virtually guarantee your best job is not going to come that way. It's going to come from opportunities like you have today to meet with people, to talk to people, to share your information, who will then go back to their offices and say, I just met so-and-so, and I think they'd be a good fit. I was at a wedding this last weekend. I met two individuals who were phenomenal. I went back to my organization on Monday. We don't have roles for them, but it's Wednesday, and I now have our executive team talking about how can we find a way to hire these folks if they're really that good. So networking, networking, networking. It doesn't have to be a job. It can be fun.
Well, and I think the key point you made, and certainly what we talk to our clients about at Navigate Forward is really intentional networking. So, you know, the old advice of, hey, if you're in transition, you know what you need to do? Just have coffee with everyone who will have coffee with you. Start with your neighbor, because they're going to have coffee with somebody. Start with somebody else. And I can't tell you how many clients I sit down with, and they say, Eric, I had 27 coffee meetings in the last month. And I'll say, how many interviews did you get out of that? And they'll say, none. And now they're frustrated. They feel like they just wasted, 20 days versus what we try to do, and it's really what you were saying, Doug, was what are the companies that you want to target? Do some homework on who are the people within those companies I should target, and those people are typically senior level folks or folks that you have a good connection to, and who in my network, let me spend a half hour on LinkedIn to figure out how can I find somebody who knows somebody who can introduce me to that person, not anyone in the company, that person, the head of marketing, because I'm a marketing person. And then you might have 3 of those meetings and get 2 interviews out of that versus 27 coffee meetings and get nothing. So I think the targeted focus and the really intentional focus on the right people in the right environments and the right companies I'm trying to get into is really important.
If you look at it the same way that you would look at buying a house, you will do the right thing. You're not going to go out there and say, I'm going to buy a house, and I don't care where it is, I don't care how big it is or how small it is or what neighborhood it's in. Whenever you go out and buy a house or find a place to live, you start to identify, I want to live in St. Paul, I want to live on Cathedral Hill, I want a condo. You narrow it down, and then you go out there and strategically go after the residents that you want to do your job search exactly the same way. Where do I want to be? What kind of culture do I want to be in? What's the company? And target it.
Great. Okay.
I'm not one of the millennial generation, but certainly I like to think I'm the world's oldest teenager. One of the things that I see, and I'm going to come from the entrepreneur's perspective here, that's the experience of what I have. In terms of fit, I see a lot of entrepreneurs making the mistake that they want to hire people that are exactly like they are, and I try and squash that, but you're in a role that can be a much better advisor about that. How do you advise an entrepreneur to define what they want in terms of generational differences and diversity, and not trying to shoot for the moon and getting everything that they absolutely need, because I can tell you from the financial standpoint, they'll never be able to afford it. Is that enough of a softball?
Maybe not.
Well, what we do is we help guide you and show you what type of talent you might be able to see with your list of ideals. And then from our market knowledge, we can tell you that's impossible to find, or, you know, there's labor data market out there, and we can help you set your expectations of what potentially you will see from our search.
I should follow up on the question if it's a stumper, I got to tell the entrepreneurs in a room, you need these people on your advisory team. You need to be talking to them before your need comes up. You need to be talking to them and then taking the advice, the good advice that you're given, because if you don't believe that you don't know everything, you will not be successful. You need to have vision. You need to have this culture thing. I'm glad that came up. This generational thing, I didn't mean it to be a stumper, but it is. We just spent 3 full days in our organization going through strategic planning, and we spent the entire 3 days on generational differences. Because the people that are going to come in and replace me when I'm gone are going to be Gen Xers and they're going to be millennials. And you know what? I need to understand how they're thinking. And you need to do the same thing when you're bringing people into your culture. So, excuse me? Or, yeah. However, you know, and I'm respectful of all the differences. They tried to establish me as a traditionalist, and I took that as an offense because traditionalists are a whole lot older than I am. But the fact is that it's the generational issue is only a way of describing challenges that we have in our businesses. If you're going to lump somebody in as being a descriptor, then you're already probably making a mistake. Every hire is an individual hire, and I think the panelists would agree with that. Right. But when you got to do if you got to do 150 in a year like you were doing, what does that translate to? Almost one a day? That's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, I'll be quiet.
With the generational differences, though, I would say a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of buzz about Gen Y and millennials. Don't fear them. They're fantastic. If you have the right interview process in place, and if you have someone that is a fit for your culture, don't fear the generational difference. Trust me, I just hired a millennial and she's phenomenal, totally exceeding my expectations. So got to make sure you have the right interview process in place to identify who the key players are you're going to bring into your company, be able to evaluate their skill set, make sure they're fit for your culture, and you'll be fine.
And Chris, if I can just, I think, you know, I got that question all the time at the Nerdery, as you can imagine. I was one of 8 people over 40, and my team called me grandpa, and I had to deal with all that. I had my first experience where we were talking about something that happened in 1989, and somebody on my team said, "Does it bother you to know I wasn't born yet?" And I was like, I said, "Get out of my office." But no, what I was going to say was my experience, and not just at the Nerdery, is I don't personally buy into the generational gaps discussion and argument. I buy into the do you create a culture that high-performing people want to be a part of argument. Because I think there's 3 things people want when they go to work, and I don't care if you're 22 or 62. You want a cool place with cool people and cool projects. I don't care how old you are or how young you are. If you go to work and, you know, your boss is a jerk, I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, or 50, your boss is a jerk, you don't like going to work there. If you go to work and you're not safe in the environment, the physical space is dirty and old, I don't care how old you are. So I always push that back on, while I think there are some real things you have to be aware of in an organization. If you create a culture high-performing people want to be a part of, you will hire the right people all the time. So.
Two great questions. The question was, how do you convince maybe the leader to not hire somebody just like them? 2 great questions that I like to ask when trying to illustrate the fact that you need some sort of diversity of thought in here is, number 1, is asking the hiring leader, well, based on your strengths, what's something maybe that you struggle with that you would like this new hire to be able to really support you on? So a strength that they would have, right? Number 1. And then number 2 is asking the question, how within 6 months of making the hire, what does this place look like that helps you understand that you made the right hire for that of that person? And so as they start saying, well, you know, it'll look like ABC and XYZ, then you can go back and say things like, well, you don't necessarily need a CPA to get that sort of result, so maybe let's dial down expectations a little bit.
And I just want to reinforce something Chris said earlier. For a lot of the small business owners or the folks that have 3, 4, 5 or less employees, I do think, I agree with Chris, that people are often, they have a misunderstanding or a misperception of the cost of partnering with a company like Versique or Salo or Renee, because the cost of not having that salesperson for 3 months, or the cost of not filling that role, or the cost of high turnover, I promise is way more than partnering with people who do this for a living, have built very successful businesses doing this for a living. And Chris said, you know, a cup of coffee with Chris, I don't think he's going to charge you for that. I hope I didn't misspeak, but he's not a lawyer, so I think he'd be happy to have a conversation with you after the event about, hey, let's just get together. Let me hear what your problem is. And I think from an integrity standpoint, I think anyone on this panel would also be the first to say, I don't think we're the right solution for you. You should really call Renee, because you just need a recruiter, or you should really call Chris. You see where I'm going with that. Yeah.
What are your favorite interview questions to identify top salespeople?
So one of the positions we have at our company is leasing. So if you've ever rented an apartment before, it's a person that you meet with to go and they tour the apartment. They hopefully sell you that this is a great place to live. And I've had managers who literally will just grab whatever, like this thing is. I don't even know what this thing is. I think it's an audio. It's our mic. It's our mic speaker. and they'll
He's
don't
like,
touch it,
"Don't."
touch it. I won't move it too far. But they'll give it to that person. So something that's really not obvious, and say, sell this to me. And you can very instantly see people's comfort level talking about a product that they don't maybe have a lot of knowledge on, or you know, people who have really good answers will say, tell me what you're looking for in this product. So they'll, even though they might have no idea, they'll say, what are you looking for? What would you know, this good product look like for you? What's your price range? And you can kind of see how comfortable they are talking on the fly. So makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and it makes for some good stories afterwards. But it really works well. You can see who has that comfort level.
I'm always interested in hearing about the deals that they didn't close, the ones they went after. I'm interested in hearing about what they did to get it, what they learned when they didn't get it. Because every salesperson, any function really is going to tell you all the great things that they did, all the great things that they can do. Well, we all make mistakes, and we all stumble, and we don't close all the deals all the time. So tell me about the deal that you couldn't close. What was it about it? Why didn't you close it? How did you try to get it? And what did you learn afterwards that you took forward to close the next deal? I'm also interested in learning about behavior after a salesperson closes a deal. The best salespeople will go on, will close a deal, and they will immediately pick up the phone and go for the next deal. The easiest time to close a sale is right after you closed one. The person that closes the deal and says, I'm out, happy hour, let's go, those are the folks I'm a little skeptical of. I want the guy or the gal that's going to close a deal and is immediately going right back at it, because they know the energy is high, they're on a run, and this is the time to do it. So those are the things that I look at with sales folks.
Again, just raise your hand if you have a question. I'm going to throw one at the panel. Who is responsible for hiring in a company? Human resources or the manager?
I'll jump on that one. If I'm the one responsible, we're in trouble. No, I think I help command the process and start the process and figure out what it should be, and then really the hiring manager of the department is responsible to hire. They should work with HR, if you have an HR, to work with your business partners outside of the company, but your hiring manager in that department is going to be the best person to interview, find the right candidate, and then look to your HR business partner for help.
As the other HR generalist, I would 100% echo that. And I would say, even if you do use a search firm to do the hiring, they're still not the ones responsible for the hiring. They're the ones that you're paying to help you get a hire. But you guys are the ones who have to live with that hiring decision. So you're the ones who are going to help onboard that person into your organization and explain the roles and expectations and follow up with them, you know, on a weekly basis, or whatever that process looks like. So there is a ton of accountability on you. And I don't say that to be intimidating or anything, but to know that they could hire the best person, and then if they, hand them over to you, and you're like, all right, good luck, go do your thing, and you're not following up with them, and you're not checking in with them, and you're not helping them acclimate and know your expectations, it won't be a success. So definitely, it's I think on you guys.
Yeah, I personally agree, and I do think, though, it's one of the biggest mistakes or one of the biggest issues within an organization. If your people leaders and leadership team don't think they're the ones who are ultimately responsible for hiring, you'll never be successful. And on a side note, if you have high turnover, it's not HR's fault, it's yours. So I'll just put that little plug in there. But question?
Hi, I'm Darren, and I'm working for Calabrio Downtown, fast-growing company. Very familiar with code, very familiar with the nerdery. Probably had some similar challenges. I'm the technical recruiter there. I built my role out. I've been there 6 months. I am, in my opinion, I've been recruiting for, I suppose, 6 years, 5 of which, probably 7 now, 5 of which have been in the IT vendor space, so oversee something similar to that. And I'm building this role out, and our challenge is 40% a year growth, and I'm one person, and we do have HR generalists that are helping on the non-technical roles, but I am the only technical recruiter. My challenge is JavaScript, Java, and very technical QA folks. And how can did you say you did 300 a year at the Nerdery? 18 months. Okay, so how do you get to that kind of growth? And maybe they weren't technical folks because they seem to take much longer. But how do you hire a lot in a short amount of time, JavaScript, Java, highly sought after engineers, and there's not enough talent out there? And to be honest, my B and C candidates have jobs too. So how do you really get your A, your B candidates to essentially meet that 40% growth?
So what we did is we really leveraged our marketing department. So the first year that I was at Code 42, we received 1,600 resumes per quarter on average. And that was because everyone knew of Code 42 who was in the tech industry, because our marketing team had done an awesome job. And so while I was a team of 1 and they would come in via email, which I don't recommend, ATSs are important, it was easier for me to pick the top candidates because so many people were knocking on our door at that time. And we were spending a lot of time at trade shows and conferences, and so people would see and like our technology and therefore want to work there. So partnering with marketing is huge, and I know you have a great marketing person. So I think that'll be kind of a big win for you. Yeah.
We might have to talk after.
Well, let me add on to that question. I think it's a great question, and you just mentioned ATS, an applicant tracking system. Two-part question. What role does technology play, or what role should technology play in hiring? And when technology is playing a role, how do you make sure that doesn't change the candidate experience? Negatively affect the candidate experience?
So I think it's you have to look at how many people are you hiring in a year. If you're going to hire, 1 to 10, you probably don't need an applicant tracking system. It's probably something that you can do in-house. When I started at Bigos, so we have high turnover, and I can tell you why in a second. But we hire like 100 a year, and probably turn half of those over. We have a lot of part-time positions, so if you think of like how often cashiers turnover, baristas turnover, we have kind of that same issue. And so but we had no applicant tracking system when I started, and that is a bear to try to hire 100 people like via a Excel spreadsheet. So I definitely think it plays an important role in keeping everything focused and together and cohesive so that you can move quickly on candidates. It's a very hot job market right now. As you guys are saying, your best candidates already have jobs, so they're not going to wait a week and a half for you to get back to them. They will have multiple job offers in that time. So I think an applicant tracking system really helps you move quickly and make sure that you're following up with all your candidates in the right time. But to Eric's question, I mean, you still want to make it personal. You still want them to get a feel for your culture. You still want to kind of wine and dine them via email and via automatically generated emails, and that's tricky. And so I think you're still going to have a certain amount of personalization, a certain amount of high touch, following up with them after an interview to say, how was it? Did you enjoy it? Did you have any questions? I still think that's important, but using a system to automate it, prompt you, remind you, will make sure that nothing slips through the cracks.
And I will also say, here comes another plug, right, for our industry. Firms like Verseek and like Salo do offer consultants who do IT recruiting. They can come in for a month, 2 months, generate additional candidate flow for you. So that's always an option. Also, RPOs, or recruiting outplacement services, they help with some of that larger hiring. Typically, it's best for field type work. I don't know about the IT. Lastly is similar to what Kristen said, was Target does a really good job with IT recruiting and using marketing as a piece of it. There's a really cool website out there. I'm not sure if it's still up. It's called Code with Target. And what it is it's a coding competition. So individuals are asked to log into Code with Target and try to break the code or try to hack the code. And that helped a lot of their recruiting go viral because individuals were sending it to their buddies and then having competitions to see who could do that best. And then even this last weekend, Target hosted within their corporate headquarters a seminar on pirating and coding and viruses and things like that, and how to actually be a hacker. So I think you have to really approach it in different ways so that the IT industry or the IT talent within industry looks at your company and says, okay, this isn't my mom and dad's technical company. I really think this is a cool job with cool projects and cool people.
I'll just say one more thing about that in 30 seconds. If you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to push off the applicant tracking, the reason why maybe to put it on the front burner is simply because of compliance. So when you don't have an applicant tracking system, heaven forbid you are discriminating against someone, and you might not be intending to, of course, but with an applicant tracking, it's much easier to comply with the law so that you can avoid any problems in the future.
And, Chris referenced this for Target, and I won't give a long story about the nerdery, but we did what was called a code challenge for our technical hires, where on the front end, before they even had an interview, they had a quick phone screen, and then we sent them a code challenge. If I was a .NET developer, or a Java developer, or WordPress, it basically told the people who understood it, that was not one of me, I was not one of them, that, yeah, this person has the technical ability, and that was the extent of the technical part of the interview. The interview was all about cultural fit. Why do you want to be here? And that helped us go through a large number of people, because if they could pass the code challenge, we didn't have to check that they actually were a .NET developer. They clearly were. Let's just figure out what we need to do to get them on board. So that helped accelerate. I think Target subscribes to that too.
So my question was specifically on your code challenge. How was it like timed, and how did you make sure someone else didn't do their code test for them or things of that nature? Did you have any problems with that? That's a challenge with that. And then getting buy-in too on the front end, saying, okay, I had a quick conversation with you. Now you got a little skin in the game. You know a little bit about us. Here's your code test. Do that. How long did it take them to do it? And did you have trouble getting people to do it?
So what I'll do is I'll give a quick answer in the spirit of time, and then why don't we connect after, and I'll give you a deeper dive answer. Short answer, it wasn't timed. On average, it took 4 to 8 hours. We lost a ton of candidates because they said, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not going to spend 8 hours doing a code challenge. And we know we lost people to Target and Code 42 and all the other companies that weren't doing that same level inspection. I'll talk about the integrity of the test and stuff after. But for us, it was a little bit of the price of admission to work at the nerdery. You had to show that you were willing to put that time in. So.
I'm just curious to know if people think LinkedIn is still kind of the top site for posting positions.
I will tell you yes, and I don't know if you followed the news at all this week, but Microsoft is purchasing LinkedIn, and that's going to create a whole host of opportunities for both employers and candidates in terms of networking. I will tell you from my perspective, if I'm going out there doing a search, it is certainly one of the first places that I go to. And on the flip side, if I'm hiring a recruiter who doesn't use or know or understand how to use LinkedIn, it's a big red flag for me. Now, that being said, it's not the only one, but I would say it's probably one of, if not the top, and now with Microsoft coming in, wait and see.
Yeah, if you didn't see the news, Microsoft has 26.2 billion reasons to believe LinkedIn is the right tool.
Go ahead.
LinkedIn actually just made a new app, and it's called LinkedIn Students. It posts jobs for students and any of your friends who also have that job or that degree and what jobs they took and what you need, like the median earning of it, and it's a really good place. A lot of people are starting to get jobs through that.
LinkedIn is great, but my philosophy is you need to post where your talent is. So Craigslist, posting jobs on Craigslist, and some of you might be like, is that crazy? No, it's not. Tons of tech people look through Craigslist all the time. We've had success there. I've hired someone on Facebook. I've used Twitter. I mean, think about, Dice is a aggregate for IT, but be really creative. And I've even targeted specific meetups and shown up to try to find talent that way. So you gotta post the jobs where your people hang out to get the most bang for your buck to attract those types of candidates.
And when I was at Schwann's, the 3 places that we invested money to help sponsor jobs were, yes, LinkedIn, number 1, Indeed, which is an aggregator, but Indeed was our biggest collector of candidates for us that we hired. But then thirdly, we put it into our referral program. So, yeah.
And I would just echo what Renee said with know where your talent is. So I have some corporate positions that I definitely post on LinkedIn, but I have maintenance guys that work on all of my properties. They're not going on LinkedIn. So trade schools, we intentionally partner with like Dunwoody, DCTC. So know, are there colleges that you can get students from? Stout is a program that actually has a 4-year degree in property management. So we intentionally create relationships with college programs. Back to the IT question, I don't know if there's an industry where you're like, I know that there's a shortage in it. Think about, can you teach somebody? Can you teach somebody how to code? I would hazard a guess, yes, you can. And if you have the time to be able to build that skill set, think about going to schools and taking interns or taking new grads, because they're going to be really, really hard workers, and they're a lot cheaper than somebody who has 20 years of experience. So just think about that too.
That's a great point. I will ask the panel if there's any last, final, my best piece of advice is, I think we covered a lot of great topics. Certainly partnership was a key theme. Anything else that anyone on the panel would like to add?
I just want to follow up quickly on a conversation that happened earlier when we were talking about generational differences. Don't forget and don't be afraid, just like Renee said, don't be afraid of younger generations. Don't be afraid of the older generation. There is, and I kid you not, there is a wealth of knowledge and talent there. And these are folks who, whether they're 60, 65, 70, many of them don't want to retire. They can provide immense value. So just be careful about stigmatizing that generation and getting into this mindset of we have to hire the young go-getters. Older people can be go-getters too. And I think a lot of organizations miss out on incredible talent because they either directly or indirectly focus on young talent. And you're missing the boat if that's all you're doing.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you to our panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much.